listening to Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are refining and redefining the sales game by equipping you with the tools you need to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Well, it's like when we audit the mod with Logic and give them the action items that they're going to use to lower their total cost of risk.
Tactical skills that will help you provide deliverable value to your clients and prospects.
Technology is not an expense, it's an investment. Look at what Think HR has done for our clients and even our team. It's an amazing product, and I'm so thankful we have that.
And action items that you can provide to take your prospects and clients to the next level.
Things are changing for us in 2021. Not all big business anymore. Now that we have CoverWallet on our team, it's amazing that we're going to be able to write small business profitably.
This is Power Producer Shop Talk. Production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Welcome to Power Producer Shop Talk. We're going to talk about marketing drops today, post-COVID.
Post-COVID marketing drops.
I think it's changed, man. I really do. I mean,
it has.
I hear this from a lot of people. And I mean, this is as much for us getting back in the game and being ready to roll as it is anything else. I'm hearing from a lot of people that are out there doing their drops that nobody's home. You know, they're going out.
Right.
People aren't there. People are taking. I think it's kind of like there's three things, right? They're either not there, they're taking ridiculous precautions.
Yeah.
Or they're like ready to just come in and give you a sweaty hug. And they're so happy to see people that, you know, they don't care. So it's interesting.
I think though that, I mean, ultimately I don't care if the person's there or not. Like, that's not why I'm doing the drop. If they're there and I can talk to them, that's a bonus, but I'm just trying to get the correct info and introduce myself.
I'm talking about like the whole company's not there.
Oh, okay.
Like everybody's working remote. There is no gatekeeper. The door is locked. They may not even be coming back to this location to work anymore. That's what I'm talking about. I've heard that from a lot of people. I think it probably depends geographically on where you are.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't think we'll run into that as much here. I just don't.
No, I don't think so either. But I do agree that it has changed and that it's not the same field we were playing in before.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of anxious, like, to think about some of the things that we're gonna do that are different, and I really think that from our standpoint, with the tools that we have available to us, specifically with pro writers, that cyber's the huge angle. I mean, I've been saying cyber's the angle for a long time, but I think it's a huge angle now. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about in getting past the gatekeeper. This is one of those things where you can be dumb as a sack of hammers and you can still make some forward progress. I
remember early on in my time here at Florida Risk where I basically did the front end for a number of companies that I was going to drop on. And then because for the cyber quotes, we don't need hardly anything. We need their website, their revenue, and their address. And so I was able to get, like, I don't know, 30 quotes for these various companies. And then, you know, you co-brand it or whatever. And I walk in, you know, say whatever I'm going to say to the gatekeeper. And then I'm able to leave them a freaking cyber quote there for their business. And you know, and it's like, oh, okay, this person is for real. They're not here just, you know, on a whim or whatever. They're here for a reason. So
there's three things that have to happen though in that in the actual collateral that you leave. I think that you need to have the vulnerability assessment, which comes from pro writers will give you multiple vulnerability assessments, right? You can go in, and by the way, for anybody listening to this that doesn't know this, you could also just take all of the prospects that you're going to call on in a single spreadsheet, send it to them, and they'll do this for you and send it back. But I think the three things that have to be in there are A, the vulnerability assessment showing that there are potentially significant issues. B, and part of when they package that, they give you some of the risk management tools that they have available to fix those things and the resources to fix
Mm-hmm.
those things. The second thing is the pricing indication, right? The
Yeah.
pricing that shows, hey, this isn't an overly expensive problem to fix right now. And then the third thing is something about the agency capabilities as far as what we specifically can do to help them that
Yeah.
makes us attractive as an option as opposed to just anybody else out there. And I think that if you have
Mm-hmm.
those three things in there, you have three talking points. You know, we talked about in the gatekeeper deal, just keeps the conversation going. But you have three talking points, and I think there's a pretty good chance, man, that you can get to the right person.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's one of the things that's changed, right? So right now there's more cyber exposure for companies than there ever has been, especially if people aren't at the office. You know, if they're working from home and aren't there or half the staff is there or whatever, they have an even bigger exposure. I mean, they could be on unsecure networks, like any number of they could be working on any device and that's not secure, like whole list of things that could be going on there, and it's just an easy conversation starter given the climate of businesses today. So I think that's I mean that and the workers' comp are just for us obviously are just two really easy conversation starters and ways to get in the door that don't require any skill.
Yeah, and why is that? Because we have information before we ever go in, right? So for us in Florida, for many states, you have the ability to get information about workers' comp. And if it's an NCCI state, you have the ability to pull the experience mod. Every time I say this, I get emails. You're wrong. You're not allowed to pull the mod without an authorization letter. No, sir.
Can't
or
pull the
ma'am,
worksheet.
You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. You can pull it. And by the way, if you've ever tried to pull something that requires authorization from NCCI, it would be easier for me to wire money from my bank account, overseas while I'm traveling overseas than it is to pull something without knowing that you're violating the terms. Like it prompts you 2 or 3 times that this is something. Do you want to proceed without uploading it? They give you the ability to upload it, but do you want to proceed without it? When you go to pull the mod, it doesn't give you any of those prompts. If there was a problem with you pulling the mod, you would know it. You're allowed to have the mod. You're not allowed to have the mod worksheet.
Yeah.
And so I'm not telling everybody that you should pull it before you go in, but until you get things dialed in, right? So one of the things for me, this is what I know after 20 years. If I'm going to do residential service contractors, I know for a fact that if I am focusing on those residential service contractors that are between 25 and 50,000 in revenue. Now, granted, that's a little bit of a guessing game for me based on the information that I'm able to glean online, but I'm fairly close most of the time. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to focus on those, I know that if I pull 100 experience mods in Florida on residential service contractors, historically, at least
67%.
No, I'm going to go with 40.
Okay.
At least 40 of those will be 1.0 or higher. Okay. Now, a good number of them are lower than that, but at least 40 of them are 1.0 or higher. That costs me $600 to do that. Now, I'm going to let everybody stop complaining about the fact it costs $600 to do that because you're able to hear me say that, but you haven't done the math yet, right? So I have pulled 40 opportunities that are at least $25,000 in agency revenue, and it cost me $600.
Hit one out of 40 and you're good.
Well, I have just basically bought a potential $1 million plus revenue stream for the agency for $600. You hit one and it's irrelevant, right? But even if you don't hit one this month, don't quit doing it because you're eventually going to hit and you're going to be well equipped going in the front door. And so that's the thing. Like if you know that, you have so much more confidence walking in the front door, and I'll print it out, right? If I go in and I'll say, hey, just out of curiosity, are you happy that you're paying at least 40% more than your peer group for workers' comp? The guy's like, we're not paying 40% more. Oh, really? Wham! There you go.
Yeah.
There's your experience mod. According to that, you're paying 40% more than your peer group. Then you can get into the conversation. Do you understand the mod? Do you know how it works? Because many times these people talk, right? You might have like a whole gaggle of people that have crappy mods that are buddies that are talking about my workers' comp went up to this, my workers' comp went up to that. They're all paying roughly around the same amount. Well, guess what? It's because you all suck.
Yeah.
One is average, not Joe and Billy, Bob, and Johnny at the pub. They're not average, right? They're all as bad as you are. You got to focus on what NCCI says. So I think that's a huge advantage when you're walking in to know that. The other thing, again, for us, and I understand people that we're talking about workers' comp, but you can get this information from sources online, depending on your state. That's not just workers' comp. There are places you can go get X dates on the other lines of coverages out there. So you might have this on the GL, you might have this on the auto or whatever else. But for me, the other thing is knowing who the carrier is, right? Because we know, for example, that in Florida, and look, we represent Guard. Guard has their place in our agency. I don't have anything negative to say about them. I'm talking about facts. We know that if it's with Guard on the workers' comp, several things. Number one, there's not going to be a dividend unless it's one of the two industries, I think, maybe three, that they have a dividend filed for, none of which fall inside of our appetite. Okay, so number one, they're missing out there. Number two, it's a high likelihood they're with ADP, because ADP is the single largest writer for Guard workers' comp in the country. So there's a high likelihood that they're with ADP as well. So we know that going in. We know that if they have...
Yeah, I was going to say the importance of that fact is that there's no support on the workers' comp if they're just, sitting there with ADP. Like they're not insurance agents. They don't have any type of, if a claim happens, they're not going to get the support that they would from an independent agent. They're not going to, have any of that. They're not going to have any type of loss control stuff. They just have a workers' comp policy. They get a claim, it goes on their mod, and that's the end of it. There's never any discussion.
There's so many things that we can talk about just relative to that, right? So number one, we know that they're with ADP. So if we have a payroll solutions provider that we can bring in to help them on the payroll side, that will help our chances. We know that they're probably not going to have much, if any, support in the event of a claim. We know that there's not a dividend. We know that their mod is not right, or is not
good. Yeah.
And we know that if they come back and say, well, I am getting all of that and they're giving me human resources, we know that we have, what is now Mineral, formerly Think HR, in our tool belt, that we can say, well, we have all of that. Our clients,
no additional cost for you.
Yeah. And so then that opens their eyes a little bit, but it goes back to, I just think that cold calling typically has been somebody walking in, leaving a business card and saying, I can help you with your insurance needs, right? There's not a whole bunch of research that happens.
Who's going to call, who is going to call that person except for the person that's having, insurance problems, who's not an ideal
the person who shops every year, right?
Right. That's just not, but I'm glad that there's those people out there that are still doing that, because it's easy to take business from them. But anyways.
Right. And so I think that goes back to what we talk about all the time. You got to be prepared. Know what you're walking into. That if you're walking into that situation from the workers' comp, or if it's a cyber play, walking in, if there's a bad vulnerability assessment, you'll know that. You'll know what some of the
you've got ammo.
You'll know. And so so people pay attention to this. You don't just get that information and know that walking in. You formulate the questions you're going to ask when you're there around the information that you have, right? Like now it's an open book test. The things that are there. The question isn't, did you know your experience mod's a 1.5? No, that's not the question. They very well may know that. They may not understand what it is.
Yeah,
but
you got to talk about the impact that's having on them.
Or even just, hey, I know that you're probably aware that your experience mod's a 1.5. Talk to me a little bit about what you've been doing to try and bring that down so that you're not paying at least 50% more than your peer group for workers' comp. What are the things that you're doing? How has your current agent or agency that you're working with helped you in that process? What types of resources have they given you? Talk to me about your hiring process and how you screen. I mean, it's just a laundry list of things. But again, if you go back to it, it's not just the gatekeeper you want to keep the conversation going with. It's literally every portion of the sales process, whoever you interact with, you need to get them engaged in conversation. And by planning those questions, you're establishing, like, again, going back to what you said, walk in like you're supposed to be there. Okay, that's a perception originally. Now it's a reality because they're like, wow, this dude's game's tight. Like he knows what it is that he's talking about. He's put me on the spot. I don't really have answers to his questions, and I'm a little bit irritated about the guy I'm buying insurance from or the lady I'm buying insurance from right now because I don't have the answers to these questions, and they should make sure that I do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think your point about the preparation is key. I mean, I know how we typically do it here. Like, before COVID, what I was doing is on Fridays, I have a section of my day blocked off to do research on companies that I'm going to drop on the following week on Tuesday and Thursday, or Tuesday and Wednesday, or whatever day it was, just not Monday or Friday. So, I'm going to I'm obviously going to go to their website, but I'm going to these different databases. I'm figuring out what carrier they're with. Potentially if they're a good enough size account, what their mod looks like. I'm not going to look up every mod before we go in. I think that's just not a good use of time or money. But reference USA and see what it's showing there for. That website is super useful. That I know we've talked about like free tools before on our Shop Talk episodes, but that's one that I think most people probably don't either know of or use. But there's information that you can get from there. You get company size, you get who their competitors are, you get their I think it's got credit stuff on there. It's got
you could literally live in there, right? Like you don't even need to go anywhere else, honestly. At this point, you could go to reference USA/data axle and just live in that environment, and it's going to give you everything.
Don't spend more information from there. Yeah, so I mean that's what Friday looks like, is getting all that stuff together
and preparing the the drops for the week to come, so that I'm ready to rock and roll when Tuesday morning rolls around. I've got them all plugged into my app. In terms of rotation of where I'm going, and it puts them in a rotation that makes sense as far as your time of driving and where you're trying to end and so forth.
Yep.
Did I lose you? You still there?
No, I'm here, man. You lost me. Your internet was cutting in and out just a little bit, but no, I'm just sitting here processing the fact that I need to go get my wig busted by the Vooster, honestly, is where I was going with that. So that being said, I mean, I think at the end of the day, all we really need to worry about is what we're doing for these drops. I mean, educate yourself, be done with it, go in there with questions prepared and ready to go, and you're going to ultimately be successful. That's it. That's all I can tell you. Take the time to put in. It's an investment. The more time you spend on the front end, the better the results on the back end, period. Everybody have a great weekend. We're out. See ya.
You've been listening to Power Producers Shop Talk. You can follow us at the Power Producers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our commercial insurance training course at killingcommercial.com or visit Amazon to pick up a copy of our international best-selling book, The Extra 2 Minutes.